So are you struggling with low light or jerky stabilization when filming with the DJI Osmo Action 5 Pro? Let's fix that today. Now in this video I'm testing different settings to find the best low light performance and see if we can solve the stabilization issues while vlogging at night. Now at night I have noticed jerky stabilization when walking or vlogging with the DJI Osmo Action 5 Pro, and I came across this when I was filming videos in the winter, and it's really frustrating because the low light is very good from what I've tested so far. So I've been out and I've tested various scenarios with this camera. I have a whole list, whether we're using SuperNight or regular video, which frame rates, do we have auto exposure or manual exposure, which ISO values, are we using Rocksteady or we're using Gyroflow. There is a bunch of settings I've gone through. Now DJI even have a recommendation when filming in low light or dark scenarios. And their recommendations here are activate SuperNight Mode, choose manual exposure, and setting the ISO to 100 to 12,800, which is incorrect because in SuperNight it's actually a fixed ISO value. And they also recommend of having a shutter speed of 1/200 or more. The faster the shutter speed, the better. They also recommend having Rocksteady enabled, but not in Pro mode. Now I went to downtown Limassol, specifically in Molos, where there's lots of lights and shadows to put this camera to the test. Now just note that if you are in a major city, you're gonna have a lot more ambient light than I do because I'm in a small country, and you're gonna have a better time with a lot of light around you compared to what I have. But that's a good thing because I'm using this in the worst case scenario possible. Now throughout my testing, I had my field of view set to wide and white balance set to auto. However, for the rest of the test, I was trying out whether we're using SuperNight or video mode, whether we're using auto exposure or manual exposure, whether we're using the normal color profile or D-Log-M, etc. So let's take a look at what I found throughout my testing. So first up, SuperNight or regular video mode. Now SuperNight here looks soft, but it can work in some scenarios. I found regular video to actually be better quality in my opinion, and there's not as much noise. And the main reason for this is that the ISO in SuperNight is locked to auto, and this will depend on the frame rate you choose. So at 25 FPS, the maximum ISO is 51,200, and at 4K 50 and 60, it's 40,000 ISO. Whereas in regular video mode, the max ISO is 12,800. Now, if you put aside the flickering in the normal color profile, the image actually looks better in my opinion. Now, not every scenario this is the case, as you'll be better off with SuperNight, as you can see with this cat that I found. Just things to note here is that SuperNight is only available in the 16:9 format. You do not get D-Log-M, and it's only available in the standard and wide field of view, and ISO is fixed to auto. So during my initial use, I wasn't getting not so great stabilization and a lot of jitters in my footage, which looked awful. So do we turn stabilization off or do we keep Rocksteady on? So when you're turning off stabilization, we have to use a free program called Gyroflow. And even when running it through Gyroflow, I still notice some slight jitters and some wobble. Rocksteady does seem to be a better fit, and the one thing I have noticed is that the higher the frame rate you use, the smoother the footage. That being said, if you are using a higher frame rate, it means you have to have a higher shutter speed. And when you're using a higher shutter speed, it means less light is coming into the camera. So if you're shooting at 4K 50, it means your minimum shutter speed has to be 1/50. Now, when comparing 4K 25 Rocksteady to Gyroflow, I think Rocksteady looks better. Now, you do have the option for Rocksteady Plus. However, the only field of view options you get is standard and wide. You also have the option for daily and sport stabilization. However, this is only available in the normal color profile. I have not noticed any difference between using daily and sport when vlogging with this camera and low light. Now, as for frame rate, personally, I like to use a 30 FPS timeline. However, whenever shooting at 30, 60, or 120 will be too much in low light, I did notice a lot of flickering from the lights, and this is to do with the frequency of the light sources given off here. Now, this does depend on region. However, when looking through the menu system of the Osmo Action 5 Pro here, it does recommend to be at 25, 48, or 50, or even 100, but again, that's too high for low light. As soon as I put it to one of those frame rates, the flickering had stopped. Now, as mentioned earlier, 4K 25 looks good in low light. However, you might get slight jitter. 4K 50 definitely gets you smoother footage and it's more stable. Now we're using auto exposure or manual exposure. Now if you don't want any fuss, just set this to auto and I think you'll be fine. However, if you want to set this manually, there's a few things to note here. Again, depending on the frame rate you choose, you have to have a minimum shutter speed. So at 4K 50, your minimum is 1/50. And if you want to follow the 180-degree shutter rule, you have to put this to 1/100. Now, DJI's recommendations is to go higher. However, I think this gets in less light, and we want to try and have the shutter speed as low as possible to allow that light in, but maintain stabilization. Personally, 4K 50 and setting the manual exposure to 1/100 looks fine. And just for fun, I tested auto exposure, but overexposing by 1.3 and underexposing by 1.3. So from these two images, which one do you think looks better? Now, throughout my testing, I had image adjustment left to default. However, again, for fun, here's what it looks like at +1. And I think this is too soft. And this is noise reduction at -2, which is definitely too grainy. So leave image adjustment to default. Now for color profile, we have normal, HLG, and D-Log-M. I did not test HLG throughout my settings because I think most people would either use normal or D-Log-M. Normal looks fine, but make sure you set this to 10-bit. Now D-Log-M does give you the most dynamic range. However, most people don't want to fuss with color grading. That being said, on DJI's website, there is a LUT conversion which you can download for free. Now, if you prefer to edit on your mobile, DJI have the Mimo app or the Lightcar app, and both of these support color recovery for D-Log-M. Now, if you want me to make some LUTs specifically for low light, let me know in the comment section down below. I do have a set of LUTs, but these are more for daytime use. Now for white balance, the DJI Action 5 Pro actually has a color temperature sensor here at the front. So throughout my testing, I actually left this at default. However, if you don't want color temperature fluctuations in your footage, you can set this manually. When you go to set it manually, it's already telling you the color temperature of the ambient light that you're in there. So as soon as you hit manual, it will just lock it to that temperature. So what are my recommendations and what are the settings that I'm going to be using going forward when using the DJI Osmo Action 5 Pro when vlogging in low light? Now, if I'm in a pinch and it's really dark, I'm going to set this to SuperNight at 4K 50 and just leaving it to auto exposure and rock steady. However, if I want the best potential image, I'm going to set this to regular video mode using rock steady at 4K 50 and having the exposure set to auto for simplicity, and then having D-Log-M as the color profile, auto white balance. I'm also going to cap my ISO to 6400 because I think at 12,800 is a little bit too high and it will introduce more grain. So now you know how to crush low light and stabilization with the DJI Osmo Action 5 Pro when vlogging at night. And if there's anything else you want me to test, drop your suggestions down below. If you found value from this video, remember to give it a like, subscribe for future videos on drones, photography, and everything in between. And if you want to see some more low light testing, check out the DJI Air 3S for best low light performance and settings.